Well, let me ask you about this, because we talked about so many of the good things. As a co-founder of the company and someone who's been there for so long, how do you feel about the criticisms that are levied against the company online? And the things I've been going through them for months. I know you've seen it.
Yeah.
It's a cult. It's a scam. It's a pyramid scheme. It's a hard sell, et cetera. All those. And there's a lot out there. As a co-founder, what is that like to hear those things? How do you feel about that?
We wouldn't have gotten anywhere if I'd caved in every time I heard criticism. My goodness. I was criticized legitimately plenty coming up as a leader.
Yeah.
I mean, this is oversimplifying, but kind of two kinds of criticism. One, straight up, just legitimate criticism. Stuff you got to square away. Mistakes you made. Someone did something dumb, right? And you got to go do that. It's just like the process of repentance. The first thing you do is make restitution and turn it around if you can. But certainly ask for forgiveness and resolve not to make the same mistake again. That's the process of learning and growth in the human experience. There's another kind of criticism, and that's people just got mad. They criticize all the time. It's part of their life. It's their way of looking at it. I don't discount, because I've gotten legitimate criticism from people who are in that mindset too. And you got to learn to separate the wheat from the chaff. Somebody says it's a pyramid scheme. Well, I know what a pyramid scheme really is.
Right.
And they're illegal concepts. Nothing good comes from them. People put in their money so some people at the top can get money out, and everybody else loses.
Right. Most people don't understand that. Right. That's not how they describe it.
It's like a Ponzi scheme.
Right, exactly, yeah.
And it's all a charade. We're in a heavily regulated industry. You don't have a broker-dealer pyramid scheme. You don't get regulated in 50 states with insurance departments and provinces of Canada and all that stuff, and be able to run that kind of thing. We're just not an industry that allows it. We do recruit people, lots of people, and far more people will quit than make it, right? But now I'll go back to athletic analogies. I think how many people start playing baseball as little kids like I did, dreaming about the major leagues?
Sure.
And then how many of us got to the major leagues?
Right.
I don't even know somebody that got to the major leagues.
Right.
We hear of people,
right.
This guy over there,
sure.
That guy a few years behind you, and so what I want to do is I want to build a company. Look, we could do it like the traditional company. I have a friend who works for a company, he gets the chance to recruit one person a year. He interviews and interviews and interviews and interviews and interviews and interviews, and he picks one guy, right? And we wanted to do something bigger and better than that, because we needed more people to help more people. The vast majority of our marketplace is not served well by our industry. The industry has gravitated in large measure to that top percentile.
Sure.
It doesn't make them bad companies.
They never call you until you have money. Then
That's
they
right.
just won't stop calling you.
That's right. But back when I was a kid, insurance guys did come to the home, and an investment firm might have called your parents. But not now.
Right.
Again, it's just like doctors used to make house calls.
Right.
And so that's all changed in our culture. And so the average family doesn't have anybody that sits them down and goes, where do you want to be 10 years from now financially? Where do you want to be 20, 30, and 40 years financially? What do you want it to look like? Do you have any idea what you've got to start doing today to get it to look like that then? What's the rate of return you're going to need to earn? Where are you going to put it? What's the tax consequence? All of those kinds of things, that kind of simple coaching and goal setting that changed everything for us, right? And all of a sudden we got these millions and millions of people that are getting older and older and older and running out of time, a critical element in all of this. And they're still not getting any help.
Right.
And our whole thing is we wanted to build a company that had a chance to be more prolific. So we needed to get a real aggressive recruiting philosophy and bring a lot of people of all walks of life that can relate to all walks of life to go out there and help the people in that marketplace. What I wanted to do was create a company. What we wanted to do was create a company, and we've already talked about it, where they could start at part-time and get in the shallow end.
Right.
I could take everybody and throw them in the deep end, but we know what happens then.
Sure.
The gifted don't drown.
Right.
And the majority would. So let's start everybody in the shallow end.
Yeah.
Find out the people that like swimming, right?
Yeah.
And have an aptitude for it, and then we can teach them, and then they can go swim in the deep end, don't think anything about it, right? Let's keep everybody else as safe as we can. And so that's the structure we wanted to keep. You know, you don't pay me anything to join. I don't make a dime with you joining. You're going to pay an administrative fee. It covers a little bit of background check, and that's it. Now you're going to pay your state some money for a license fee. You're going to pay a manufacturer of a product a fee to register, so to speak, to be appointed. And then we have to go out and help somebody, for you or I, to generate any revenue. And that's the way it should be. That's the way it should be. Now, I think we can be impatient with people and say things we shouldn't say. And it hurts their feelings sometimes. Or someone struggles, you know, and then they might leave with a bad taste in their mouth, like they might have if they worked at 7-Eleven, or they worked at IBM, or they worked at any number of other places where they could have had an experience less than sterling in any given moment. They could also be at a tough time in their life, and it's just they didn't have the reservoir or the resilience, kind of the emotional stamina to go build a business of their own.
Sure.
This is not for the faint of heart.
Right.
I mean, it's for people who want to build businesses and turn it into something. And so you're always going to have your detractors. But I listen to our detractors, separate the legitimate from the nonsense, and then go to work fixing what's legitimate and ignoring the rest.
What do you think are their legitimate criticisms of the company and the opportunity?
That it's hard work. That it's not easy. So any leader that steps up and says this is a piece of cake, you just recruit a few people, then they recruit a few people, and next thing you know, that's nonsense. It's absolute nonsense. If I hear somebody saying it, you can't believe how I wrote a rooter those guys.
Sure.
You know, quit telling people something that you know increases the chance of their failure. I want you to have realistic expectations. I'm not going to shove the entire thing down your throat, right? I didn't feed my babies steak, but we fed them.
Right. Yeah, right.
You know, and the reality is that it's legit to say, hey, a lot of people aren't going to make it, that this is tough, that you've got to strengthen yourself. It forces you to improve. This isn't easy. It doesn't happen overnight. If somebody's misled you and said it's get rich quick, slap them. You have my permission.
Although there are some people that get relatively rich quick. I mean, you really are one of those people in a sense. I know it's not the normal.
We've had others, but I don't want to represent the opportunity based on that rare exception.
Sure, yeah.
Because the reality is you stay part-time, and what if you got to the point you're making $1,500, $2,000, $2,500, $3,800 here and there, and you're banking that, or you're paying off your mortgage,
right?
Or you've knocked out your credit cards, and now you're building up your investment account. I mean, I've had people that worked part-time, knew they didn't. I had a fireman, a guy that comes to mind. And he knew he wanted to be a fireman all his life. And he saved and he saved and he saved. He had a goal to get a certain amount. He'd done his own calculations. When he got to that amount, and it was 6 figures, he knew he could reach, with that and his retirement, he was going to be in great shape. Started as a young man. We were about the same age, both in the business. And he did it. And I remember the day he came. Remember his name, won't use it. His name was Mike, his first name. And he said, I did it, Rich. I got it. I'm quitting. I got it. I'm good now. I said, congratulations. That's what we were there for.
Right.
To provide an opportunity to help them reach the goal. I had the story of one guy, his whole goal was a flat screen. A big old flat screen with a surround sound system. It cost $2,800.
Jeez.
He made the $2,800 and quit.
That was it.
Yeah, that's right. His leader called him and said, where are you? He says, he didn't return calls. And he says, how come you not return my call? He says, I quit. So what do you mean you quit? You were doing great.
He's watching TV.
He says, yeah. He says, the reason I did it was that, and I'm watching it right now. See ya. I mean, it's a true story.
Wow. That's interesting. Yeah.
And so you've got that whole range of things, and I think when you have, you build a company and you're bringing in new people, we're all practicing on each other. For me, it's a lot like parenting. Boy, am I a better parent now.
Yeah.
Than I was 38 years, well, not 38, but now it's 35 years ago. And I'm wiser. Our third child got the benefit of that, and I'm not the first parent to share some of those thoughts.
Sure, right.
And we do practice on each other a little bit. Do I wish it was different? Do I wish there was nanotechnology I could inject a complete understanding of human nature and leadership and running the system in your own set of disciplines and your ability to have insight into human nature and to understand it and how to work with it and how to be patient and strong and caring and all of that stuff. Yeah, man, if you give me a pill for that, I'm going to take it.
Yeah, sure.
And I'm going to start handing it out, depending on the side effects, of course.
Right, yeah. Or selling it.
Yeah, that's right. But the reality is there isn't. Life is experiential. We just got to create an environment where we can get the most from it if we can. And so you got to watch over. You got to coach. You got to move in and handle things. And you got to be firm and clear in your direction to people. And when somebody does something really bad, you got to get rid of them.
So if you had to do it over again, looking back 38 years, what would you do differently if you were brand new in WFG right now, you're getting started today? How would it be a different Rich Thawley?
By the way, it makes me smile because I think of starting with what I know with this opportunity today at 28 years old, what that would mean. Because we have so much more earning power in our system, so much more horsepower. It's just jets and cars.
Would you approach it differently?
No, there's not.
You were pretty fast anyway, yeah.
There's not, but I'd like to change. I listened. I look so happily and fondly back on that time, knowing it was hard. I look at pictures of myself back then and go, man, I look tired. And somebody once told me that you either need rest or change. So if you keep moving, you don't fall asleep.
Yeah.
If I were to sit down right now over in that corner with kind of how we've been going the last few days, I promise you about 4 or 5 minutes I'd be nodding off. But now I'm alert and wide awake because we're interacting. As long as you keep moving, keep talking, keep giving,
sure.
There's some reason the energy just has a way of being there. So no, there's not a lot I would change. There are a few little decisions, where I didn't treat this guy quite well enough and I didn't understand what I'm supposed to do. And I made a mistake. And I got impatient and said something I shouldn't have said. And I wish I could take it back. But you can't unsay something, but you can sincerely apologize for it. You can never say anything like it again. And then you learn from it, make sure you don't say it to the next guy.
Were you tough? Were you too tough as a coach on people in the beginning when you were younger?
I think I was pretty tough, but I had Cindy.
So she kind of eased it a little bit?
She tempered me. And then our firstborn was a daughter. And she softened my heart. All of those things. I wasn't mean-spirited. My parents taught me right. But I was kind of like the sports thing.
Yeah, right.
Suck it up, get back on defense when you're
locker room
when
coach,
you sprain your ankle,
yeah, exactly.
And so the combination of the two made it work. And I'm so thankful for her. I'm finishing where I started. And I watched my son actually come down his ankle wrong when he was playing basketball in junior high. But I knew it hadn't been bad. I had plenty of experience by then, being in the athletic department and all that stuff.
Sure.
He just kind of rolled it a little bit and just jammed it, and it was a little, tender. But they were going back on defense. And Cindy, I had to literally hold my arm out to keep Cindy from running out of the stands, out of the court and embarrassing her son, to make sure he was okay. And if he'd been hurt, I'd been the first one out there.
Sure.
I'd have stepped aside when Cindy arrived a second later, because she's the one that gave him birth.
Sure.
But the reality was I yelled, suck it up, literally, suck it up, get back on defense,
right,
while she's trying to run out on the court. And that's kind of the dynamics, I bring some of that tough love and she brought some of that tender, sensitive part. And again, the combination was great until I got better, more compassionate. I learned compassion a lot from my wife and learned the importance of it. And I developed a lot of patience. I had less trouble with compassion than I did impatience. But you've heard the phrase, be as impatient as you want to with yourself, but be as patient as you possibly can with everyone else.
Sure.
And I was taught that, and I embraced it. And I also understood the responsibility of controlling my tongue. Again, my coach, Art, never forget the conversation. He was actually talking to a group of us in leadership and on a conference call. And he says, I want to remind you all of something. One word of encouragement can make someone's day on your team, maybe even change their life. One word of criticism or thoughtlessness and they go home devastated. You go home financially independent. They go home devastated. And it maybe costs them their opportunity. You remember that you have a responsibility to control your tongue.
That's good advice.
Yeah, really good advice.
Wow. Do you still ever talk to Art Williams or no?
No, I haven't talked to him in years. And though Cindy and I have talked about wanting to call he and Angela, they have a hotel in North Carolina, and one of these times we're here, we're going to go hang with them and talk to them, and we have the highest regard still. We still listen to, like I said, some of their stuff, and and we have all these warm memories, and it's a great thing. And that part inspires me to try and be that kind of person in the lives of as many people as possible. But here we are, we haven't interacted business-wise since 91. Maybe a little before then, now that I think about it. Right about there. And so how many years ago is that, right? 27.
Yeah.
And yet all those lessons and all that stuff is still continue to give. Just like my father and mother's wisdom and counsel and example continues to give and bless our lives. That's Cindy's parents for both of us.
Sure.
And so these are good things. When you think about that stuff, you want to remember it. Remember how significant you can be in people's lives at different times and places. Sometimes you don't even realize you're making a difference. You know, a few years ago, a friend of mine, we go to church together, was sitting next to a couple at a convention. And the woman leaned over that was next to him and said, "Can I see your program? Do you know when Rich Thawley talks?" This stuff always gets me a little bit. And she said, I'd really like listening to him. One of his talks caused my husband to start coming back to church with our family. And it's changed everything. I don't know who it was. I'll never know. At least not in this lifetime. You just don't know. You just know when you stand up in front of a group of people, you have an opportunity to have an impact in a way that is truly meaningful. That's the word I just used, was significant. And so you embrace that. You embrace that. When I stand at a convention, you're thousands of people. So you know there are people out there hurting for different reasons, needs a kind of understanding. And that's why I pray before those talks that I'll say the right thing to the right person at that moment. You know, and bread upon the waters.
Sure. Any regrets looking back on your career, 38 years?
I mean, there's a part of me that wishes we'd built it even bigger, right? I think there are times that I could have communicated.
But what, 70,000 associates plus, something in that neighborhood now?
Yeah, but 60-some thousand licensed, right?
Okay.
65, whatever.
That's a lot of people.
Yeah, it's more than 10 from what I know in numbers and remembering from school. And
they have that even at San Jose State. That's
actually, I got some of it before then. I think San Jose State confused me. So the kindergarten thing is too.
Yeah, exactly.
So, you know, that part of it, I don't look back on my life with a lot of regret. You know, sure, you think I'd have bought that stock.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, we all have that one. Yeah. Apple. How did I miss Apple?
I'd have bought that piece of real estate.
Yeah.
You know, and some of those things. You know, if you could learn even lessons faster, but I accept the fact that I'm imperfect and I'm going to keep trying to do the right thing, and that everybody else is too. You know, if I could build a perfect company, I would. If I knew how. You know, I'd sometimes ask people, if you had Harry Potter's wand and it actually worked, and all you had to do was say words and it would be true, you know, what would you start wishing for? It's a good thing to reflect on once in a while.
Sure.
There's not a lot that I would wave the wand over looking back.
You've had a pretty good ride.
In my life.
Sounds like.
Yeah. And I'm looking forward to the next 20, 25 years of it.
And you're still actively involved in the business, correct?
Yeah. I mean, that's what the conversations today were about, is stepping up the pace.
Sure.
Cindy and I have committed to a real intense 3-year run here. I'm moving some things. A couple hundred more CEOs we want to promote. A whole bunch more successful people. And we want to make sure we continue to imprint the values.
Is there a question I didn't ask you that you wish I would have asked you?
You know, and I think I probably answer things. I tend to say what I want to say no matter what you ask me. You know, and it's like if you hadn't asked me what's the building blocks of happiness, you know, those kinds of things. I encourage our leadership to understand, and I teach this, you can't treat one aspect of a person and develop a whole happy life. You know, if you hear Tony Robbins talk, he's interviewed a lot of billionaires, some 50-some billionaires, he says, and I believe him. You know, I know he's had great conversations with a lot of remarkable people.
Sure.
And he says so few of them are fulfilled. So guess what? Money's not doing it.
Right.
You know, and that's part of the deception of the world. When you don't have it, you tend to think of the problems it will solve, the house you can buy, the car you wish you know, because you walked around that dealership that time and thought, ooh, if I just had this, everybody'd be so impressed with me. And so I want to be continuous, you know, in my message about where peace is found, where happiness is found, where strength is found, where ever-increasing capacity is found. And it's found in doing the right thing and making good decisions and making the world a better place. Helping others do things for themselves that they maybe couldn't do without your help. If you can keep doing that, lots of good things are going to happen for you in business. And people say if there's one thing from a relationship standpoint, and that one I can't answer with one thing, and it's trust. You know, we've prospered long term because ultimately at the end of the day, you know, we've been fairly trustworthy. You know, I'm not going to mess with your family. I'm not going to mess with your money. Two absolutes. You know, and try and treat people right. That's the number one reflection of our character, is how we treat people. And you understand all of this, you know, but not everybody does. And so what things, you know, if I was going to have you ask questions, what things do you need to constantly teach and never relent? There are slightly different ways of doing the system, running a referral thing, you know, presenting the product, you know, that kind of stuff. But there are absolutes, you know, and you can't lie, and you can't cheat, you can't steal. Because otherwise people won't trust you. And if people find they can't trust you, there's no hope of a decent relationship. And there's no relationship that lasts. I've been faithful to my wife for 39 years. I'd rather be dead than unfaithful. But tomorrow, after all of these years of being trustworthy, I dropped the ball and was unfaithful. How long would Cindy still love me? Because the moment trust leaves, love starts to fade, even in the best of circumstances. And it's true in all our relationships. Most of our relationships aren't as important as that one is in mine. But the fact of the matter is, the foundation of all quality relationships is trust. Far more important that they trust you, believe they could trust you, than they believe they like you, or much less love you. It's nice if they do both. But the former one is the one you can't do without.
Sure.
You know, and so at the end of the day, if you'd ask me what is the single most important thing in human relationships and building a company and building a marriage and building a family and building friendships, then I'd talk about that.
Trust. And is that the same as building a team in WFG, you would say, the most?
Yeah. Just do it right.
Okay, here's my final question. I know you got to catch a flight, so this is my final question for you. Let's say there's a young 25-year-old Rich Thawley out there watching this right now, and you know, he's kind of confused. He went on the internet, he saw all these different things and people saying this and that and the other thing, and he doesn't know what to do, and maybe his wife, or maybe it's a woman and her husband, they're not really together on this, they're not really sure. What's the best piece of advice as the co-founder of this company you could give that person who's just kind of unsure, they don't have a lot of money, and they don't know which way to go, they're on the fence? What would you say to that person watching? You
know, you said several things there. One, you talked about what if the husband and wife are on a different page? First thing I'd say to that is that doesn't always happen overnight. Sometimes I've seen it take a year or two even to get on the same page.
Sure.
And so be patient with that. Be understanding. At the same time, be willing to continue to talk about what you see. versus their issues with it, and what they don't, right? Also, when you take a new person and you're looking at it, and you're trying to weigh it, good reflection. The things that are wrong in the terms of how they're done, that they're unscrupulous, whatever it might be, dishonest, these kind of things, they always ask you for something. You got to have something, give something. You got to write a check. That's how they work, right?
Sure.
And we're not asking. In other words, I'm sitting here in front of you and you're that guy. And you go, I'm wrestling with it. Is this for me or not?
Right.
I said, first, I want you to reflect on a couple of simple things. I literally am asking you for nothing. You're not going to give me anything. You're not going to give me any money. You're not going to be able to help my business until you get licensed. And we'd love to coach you financially, but that's up to you.
Because even if I pay for the AMA, you don't get any of that money.
That's right. None of that's coming to me.
Or the licensing fee.
That's right. None of these things are coming to me. There are no fees. I'm not charging you for the office. This is all part of it, right? You're going to have an on-ramp of weeks, maybe even a few months. During that time, you're going to be around us. You're going to see how we treat each other. We're going to see how we treat you. You're going to get tremendous understanding, insight, perspective, and exposure to our company. If we're just blowing smoke at you right now, you're going to figure that out in about the next day or two, which wouldn't serve our purpose, would it?
No.
And so we've got to shoot straight with you. If I have any clue at all, I'm going to shoot straight with you. And I want you to know what's coming. And so here's what's coming. It's not going to be easy. You're going to talk to friends and they're going to tell you to take a hike. You're going to have somebody who promises to show up at the meeting tomorrow and they're going to stand you up. And it was your best friend from high school.
Yeah.
And these are some of the things that's going to happen. And if you are, that stuff is just, you can't take it, then you'll quit. And the good news is we didn't ask you to quit your job, put your house up for sale, right? Empty your savings account. None of those things are happening here. Our whole goal is to help you see if you can build a business here. Pure and simple. One piece at a time. If your wife's a little uncomfortable with it, then if you can't get her down here, I want to come and see both of you. I want to give her a chance to ask the questions she has, to form her own impression. Because frankly, that's everything to me. You're a partnership.
Right.
And she deserves to know, or he deserves to know. My son-in-law said this to me not too long ago, just a couple months ago. I was talking about this exact thing in a webinar. And he said, you know what, I heard you say it a bunch of times, but when we went out in the field together, and this woman had joined the team and her husband was a fireman, was trying to be supportive, but who are these guys? And
right.
And we went over there one morning when he was home, on one of those 24 hours off. And I sat and spent 2 hours with him, fielding all his questions, getting him comfortable, knowing how much I respected him, his wife, how we were going to deal honorably with them, talking about what we did for people financially, explaining those concepts. When we left, he felt good about what he did. And we did, and supported his wife in her efforts in starting her part-time business, And she did pretty well. And that was a good thing, but it starts with spending the time and giving people the respect they deserve to know. So it's not only what I'd say to you, it's what I'd show to you, and it's what I'd do with you, right, that would make that work out. And even if you decided not to do it or stick with it, your eyes were wide open. We leave with a good feeling about each other. Or
Right.
see each other in the restaurant, we'd come over and say hi. And that's the way you want it to be.
That's great. Rich, thanks so much for coming. We appreciate it. It's great to see you as always.